Hi everyone. Hi, I think we're live. Let me know if you see me and if you can hear me well. I think we're set up. Oh, wait for me. I'm getting a... I just made a lot of noise. Apologies. Hi.
Wait for me.
I have a co-host for at least a bit.
Sorry.
Apparently we needed to run to get over here. But yeah, if we're live, let us know if you can see us, if you can hear us well, if there are any problems.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? We're talking about bugs.
In general, or
Yeah, roaches,
viruses,
bugs.
or
We're just waiting a little bit for more people to come on, and then we'll get started. But if you're on, please say hello. Let us know where you are. Hi, Ralikos. This is our
Hello.
team in Nepal. We had a wonderful live stream on Saturday in Nepal with Itcha Karki and Ralikos, who's our exclusive distributor in Nepal. And that was pretty awesome.
yeah, it was
How do you know? You weren't even there.
because you told me about it. So.
I did. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Duh. Oh, good. Hi, Jenna.
Hello.
All right, so we'll wait a little bit, then we'll get started, and we are talking bugs, but not bugs that you
Yeah.
can squash.
Oh, so like not mites?
Well, actually, listen, you being all astute. Morning, Casey. Yeah, no, we'll be talking about mites a little bit, or mites are part of what we're talking about.
So do you mean bugs like viruses?
Yeah, well, yeah, but more. Have you heard of the microbiome?
Yes. Many times. I just don't really understand what it is because my class has not gotten into it yet.
Okay. Do you know that in our bodies we coexist with a lot of bugs?
Yeah, some of the bugs because I watch a lot of Brain Pop, a lot of the bugs are they just want to duplicate and then bye.
By, what do you mean by? Bugs come and go?
Yeah.
No. We have some bugs that we were born with and that we coexist with. Yeah. Thank you for the
Exhausted.
feedback, guys. I'm glad you can see and hear us well. Okay, so it's about 5 minutes in. I think this is a good time to get started so that we're efficient. So welcome to our Skin Sites Live on the
Skin Microbiome.
Microbiome. And we'll also be responding to the article Soap Dodger.
What?
Meet the doctor who says we've been showering all wrong. And apparently there's a growing, or at least a vocal population of people who believe we shouldn't be showering at all. So we'll be getting into that a little bit.
Sure.
But before that, it's a little late. It was on Monday, but happy
Women's International Day?
Happy International Women's Day.
I got it.
You did get it, and it's a little late.
Yeah.
But if you know anything about VMV, you know that every day is Women's Day for us. And I actually just put up a video on YouTube, if you want to check it out, on some of the things you may or may not know about how women empowering VMV is, which is pretty cool.
Okay, wait.
So check it out.
It is
Yes.
so bright.
Oh, well, I can't do anything about that because it is the sun.
I can't look at the GoPro because the clouds are so bright.
Then don't look at the camera, darling. Or put on some shades. Okay, so this is our second response video because you all seem to like the first one very much. It had a nice big jump in post-live views on YouTube. So we'll be getting into that article in a bit. Before then, some quick reminders. Please don't forget to get your questions in early, because that really increases the chance of me making sure that my mom gets to answer them. And anything for VMV, get your questions in also early because I'll be able to tackle them before and after my mom is here, because when she's here, we really want to use her as an expert resource for skin, right?
Yeah, she's awesome.
This is your part that you like doing.
So don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow on Instagram, and, well, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also turn on the notification bell and say hello and let us know where you are so we can customize recommendations. No,
Yeah,
that's wrong
let us
word.
know where you're watching from.
So in Russia it's very cold, so it might
You
be
keep
different.
going to Russia. It's so interesting.
I know.
And we have had viewers from Russia before, but it is such an awkward time over there. So Yeah, but let us know where you're from, because we might be able to, there might be some things that are unique to where you're from, and maybe we can address
and
that.
also ask your questions early so we can answer them later.
Also, because we're giving away a travel-sized id monolaurin, which is
are?
one of these puppies,
We
but
are?
it's going to be the travel-sized one, which is awesome, and I think really perfect for what we're talking about today.
Can I have one?
You can get one later. This is for the small one over there is for giving away. So, getting into our topic for today, the human microbiome is basically the natural bugs that we coexist with as humans, right? Microbiome, if I'm not mistaken, refers to the microbiota as well as their genes.
Okay.
But for the purposes of this talk, we'll be talking about microbiome more, which is the environment of the bugs that we coexist with. And it's been in the news a lot. But some of the really important things to know, over the last decade or so, scientists have made a lot of headway into the study of the bacteria that we coexist with. Because before, a lot of the antibiotic treatments that we had would be like napalm and just kill good, bad, and ugly, right?
Napalm? Isn't that a bomb?
It is. It was.
Okay.
It basically wasn't picky. And what we found over the years is that this has not been good for many reasons. The microbiome right now is linked to how well our immune systems function, to allergies and like nasobronchial and even skin allergies like atopic dermatitis. So some of it is a little,
You have to go.
some of it's a little sensational, but a lot of the studies are really legit, very large sample sizes and published in peer-reviewed journals. There's an excellent overview I want to recommend. And hi, Gabriel. Happy to see you in North Carolina. I hope you're all well over there. There's a great overview on the Human Microbiome Project, if I'm not mistaken, called Germs Are Us, Bacteria Make Us Sick, but Do They Also Keep Us Alive? It's from The New Yorker back in 2012, written by Michael Spector. I'll put the link later on. It is such a great article because it just gives you a really good overview of how this whole thing started, why we even got interested in the microbiota, what it is we have to be looking at, etc. So I myself have an autoinflammatory disease, and it's really more common in children. But there was a theory, there was a study that got published that said the continuation of the autoinflammatory disease into adulthood, a subset like me, seems to be linked to the overuse of antibiotics when we were children. Because we were the kids who got sick like clockwork every month. You know, we could just go ahead and pre-schedule with our pediatricians. And so we were given antibiotics very, very frequently. And so it seems like this might be related to why it's continued into adulthood. And I've been able to manage it effectively just with taking probiotics and baking soda, another great study. And I don't need weekly injections of biologicals anymore. So, and then, you know, it's been in the news as well, fecal transplants to try to get the gut microbiome healthier. That's still very much in its early days, right? So we're still learning a lot. But what's even more in its infancy is the study of the Skins Microbiota. There's more stuff now, for sure, but it did start later than all the studies into our microbiome and the gut, right? So what's really interesting is we're learning more about the microbiome in our skin. Some of the things that have changed, for example, we no longer think of acne as just caused by one type of bacteria, right? If you've watched any of our other live streams, you know it can be caused by malassezia. Technically not an acne, right? It's sweat acne. Malassezia is a fungus. We've seen maskne caused by Demodex mites. What Gavin was saying earlier, we do have mites, Demodex, that live naturally in our skins, and when there's a happy balance, we coexist with them really, really well. But Demodex mites, when they get a little too happy, have been linked with rosacea and with maskne. And then we've also talked about other things like Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is a natural happy bug on our skins that seems to now be causing some problems. And we know that staph exists naturally in our skins and actually is more present. There's a bigger colonization, it seems, with people with eczema, atopic dermatitis. So we're just starting to learn more about that. And this brings me a little bit to this article, Soap Dodger. And I've seen other articles that talk about not showering altogether or not using soap altogether. And I feel like they're coming from a place that's actually good. They're coming from a place of correction. Similarly to, this finally, the trends in the studies we've seen about the overuse of antibiotics. We know we have to lessen the use of antibiotics. We can't prescribe them for everything. Similarly, we can't be showering with everything that has a disinfectant, a germicidal, but there's a balance, right? Like anything in health and in life, it's not about abandoning antibiotics altogether or abandoning soap altogether. It is a balance. We have to correct the balance. Antibiotics are important when they're really, really needed. Showering is actually also important, but no, we don't need to scrub like we're trying to, remove our sins and go back to infanthood. Or we don't have to use disinfectants and germicidals in everything because it can damage our barrier layer. These things can cause photosensitivity, et cetera, which we'll be learning more about. Before getting into that, some quick reminders. Some antimicrobials on the skin are actually necessary. If you have a pimple that is extremely inflamed, what we have seen a little bit of an increase of is MRSA. So it not just being a pimple, but actually a MRSA infection already. And for things like this, it is very important to see a doctor, get a culture, get the correct identification of what the bug is, so you can take the proper medication to deal with it. And we shared just, I think last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, about acne that was actually caused by Klebsiella, which is another superbug. So yeah, antibiotics are sometimes needed. The problem again is when we get to the overuse of that, right? And for things like triclosan in the United States was actually banned because it was used in everything. There were no studies that showed it was actually better than just using plain soap to wash your hands. And we also know that it's extremely irritating on the skin. The other thing to know in terms of this whole topic and VMV, one of the main reasons we use monolaurin and virgin coconut oil in almost all our products is they are broad spectrum antimicrobials, but it seems, and again this is early on, we need more studies into this, that the body does not recognize them as foreign. Monolaurin is after all present in mother's milk, right? So we do use that, and it seems to still maintain, it doesn't disrupt the balance of the microbiota in the skin. We do not use germicidals or antibiotics in our products precisely because we don't want to be contributing to the problem of their overuse. And more than germicidals or disinfection, our main focus, as you guys know, has been prevention, right? You can shop all our products at vmvhypoallergenics.com internationally. Most of them contain virgin coconut oil and monolaurin. In the Philippines, you can shop them at vmvhypoallergenics.ph. Some important news that I'm excited to share is in the United States, we've just launched Afterpay. So you can shop now and pay later. And in the Philippines, we've just launched GCash, so you can pay with that online. And also in the Philippines, a reminder that we are selling a special Stay Safe bundle at the VMV Research Center and Clinic that has 2 of the Superwash plus a full bottle of the monolaurin pellets, which is awesome. I'm actually taking a lot of this now because I'm in the middle of a flare. And our clinically published first cold-pressed organic virgin coconut oil. So check that out. Other quick things, if you'd like a teleconsultation with my mother or any of the doctors or nutritionists that we work with, drop us a PM and we'll help make that happen. And for everywhere, if you have had a patch test, you can drop us a PM and we can help customize recommendations for you based specifically on your allergens and possible cross-reactants. One last thing, and I'll call in my mom. Like the overuse of antibiotics, we do need a correction to stop the overuse of disinfectants and germicidals in skincare. But does that mean not showering altogether? I would argue resoundingly no, because hygiene is actually important. We do have to take care of preventing infection as well. So it means, like with most things, right? No to all saturated oils. Well, no, actually saturated oil is very good for you. So no to all unsaturated oils. No, actually that's also important. So everything is really a balance, right? I would caution everyone not to go to one extreme or another. And on that note, I will call in my mother, Dr. Vermen Veralia Rowell, to really help us understand more about the skin microbiome. Here she is. Oh, we're both in red lipstick. How exciting. Mwah. Hello, hello. This is for you to sit on. You keep moving stuff that I set up for you. Say hi to everyone.
That's sweetie.
Okay, well, yeah, well.
Hello,
okay.
everybody.
Very quickly, let me get into this. She also likes crowding me, which is funny. So, being a multi-published clinician and dermatopathologist means dermatopathologists, for those who are joining us for the first time, these are the specialists who look at the tissue samples and biopsies that are taken from your skin under a microscope. So they have a deeper, more microscopic understanding of the skin, and I would argue have a more systemic understanding of the skin. Because when you're looking at the skin under a microscope, you really get a sense of how it's related to other things in the body that are happening, right? So she's also really well known for dealing with, she's like the last resort. She deals with so many complicated cases. And so is an excellent pathologist, really great at diagnosing things. And again, because she deals so much with biopsies and stuff and scrapings, she's really the best person to me to talk about microbes specifically and the skin. So, how are you?
I am very good. I am very good.
I'm so excited. We
After
totally didn't plan this. We're in red
a lot of
lipstick.
sheets of paper here to update myself.
So here's the other thing you guys need to know. This big brain is published, we're over there, published. She has over 200 studies or something published, right?
Yes.
She's widely considered like a huge global expert in all this. Every time we do these lives, she studies anyway. So she was up. She kept looking up new stuff, and I'm like, but what you know is already fine. She's like, no, but there's new stuff. So you're going to be getting, like, fresh off the presses, new stuff today. Okay. Yeah, let's get started. You want to give us an overview
Yes.
of the skin and its microbiome?
Right. I'd like to start first by saying, though, I had my vaccination yesterday at Makati Medical Center. No fever, no aches or pains or cough or whatever. Just so you know. And some people do, but, I don't have any at all.
Gabriel's saying your mom's awesome. I agree. Thank you.
Thanks,
And they're
Gabriel.
watching in North Carolina, so. Okay.
Okay, let me give you a little background on microbiota. The use of organisms, swallowing them, eating them, the Bulgarian strain was the very first one that was reported by Mechnikov in 1908. And so that started it, that he was saying about the prolongation of life is actually the subject, the title of his book. But it wasn't until, about 2001 that the term microbiota came up. But these organisms, if you read the label of your microbiota capsules, they are names of organisms that are not commonly talked about by us. There's really not stuff and strep
Like
there.
in probiotic
But
supplements.
they are,
you mean?
right.
Okay.
The probiotic supplements will have Firmicutes and Bacteroides and Prevotella and things like that. But these organisms are very difficult to culture. So it wasn't until about 2008 that finally there is what we call RNA sequencing. That's much simpler and easier to do the S17, 16 RNA. And this is the one that has now identified these organisms that are in the gut and in the skin. So having that as a background, let me then talk about the very first microbiota that was studied was therefore in the gut, And only in later years...
The gut meaning stomach and intestines, right?
Gastrointestinal tract. Followed by on the skin. And they actually talk to each other. There's a communication between these organisms. So what the gut bacteria are, if they're in the normal state, what they do is that they're very active within the GI tract. They, produce what are called cell membranes or cell walls that make that membrane, the epithelial membrane of the gastrointestinal tract, intact, so that what's supposed to be absorbed gets absorbed, what's not absorbed doesn't get absorbed. And in addition to that, there are cells that belong to what's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, GALT. And they
gut associated lymphoid tissue.
That they're within the
Impress your friends.
the cell wall of the gastrointestinal tract. And they produce pro and anti-inflammatory factors that again control the immunity and what's going on in your gastrointestinal tract in the normal state. What happens now? Let's just say you took too many antibiotics and you're drinking so much antibiotics so that you now upset the number of those organisms that are present in the gut. What is the role of drinking the probiotics? Okay? The drinking of the probiotics supposedly is that these probiotics that you're drinking compete with the abnormal organisms, the abnormal bacteria that now proliferate in your stomach, GI tract rather, because of the multiple factors, including taking too many antibiotics or stresses or other things that have that affect the GI tract. And so what the taking of the probiotics do internally is they actually compete with those, let's say, bad organisms. They compete with the nutrients for those organisms. They compete with the space, because they have to have space in that place too. And by doing that, they minimize the number of the organisms there, of the microbiota, and they help restore them to a more normal balance.
But I also read that antibiotics can be so damaging that even taking probiotics, you don't necessarily recover fully the population, right?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So in addition to the not so friendly competition between these two kinds of organisms, they also affect the cell membrane. You see, there are some organisms that are normally produced or that are commensal, naturally present in the gut, that produce cell membranes out of what are called short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids that come from fibers and food that we eat. Those are the ones that sort of bolster the cell membrane of the epithelial membrane of the gut. And it is when this is broken down by the factors I already talked to you about that you may have what they call leaky gut that then allows the coming in and out of things, including toxins coming from the gut that can actually get into the bloodstream and get into the body, including into the skin.
But the basic thing, I guess, trying to condense stuff, right, is that we are born with a healthy, natural population of bacteria.
Correct.
That studies are now showing are fundamental to our health on several levels, right? Our immune system, purging toxins, even obesity, managing our weight.
That's right.
What has happened, though, over the years is in the advent of antibiotics, which are phenomenal, life-saving, important drugs, people, but a bit with the overuse of that. Because remember, at one point, antibiotics were given for a cold, viral or bacterial, right? We seem to be seeing more cases now of an offset or a disruption of that natural, healthy population. Yeah?
Right.
Okay, so in terms of the skin, other things I want to add, because I have a friend who's actually working on her doctorate with regards to the microbiota and the brain. And one thing she keeps cautioning me is she's like, this is still so much in its early days.
Exactly.
So we really don't even know what bacteria we should be taking in probiotics. We're not entirely sure, right, what it is we need to be taking and what they do. What she has been able to tell me and what I've seen in studies is probiotics, unlike many other supplements, you actually do get the critters. They seem to survive the processing into supplements. But again, we're not exactly sure what we should be taking
Exactly.
and how much of it we should be taking. But that said, as she's shown, there's so many studies all the time now coming out that really, truly, I predict in the next 10 years, we might be taking supplements that are hyper-targeted.
Exactly. I
Right?
like the word, because this is exactly what they're saying. In the review that I was reading last night, coming from different journals, the review all say there's so much promise with this microbiota treatment applied on the skin for skin conditions, prevention and treatment of disease, but also in the gut, and as well the other inflammatory diseases of the body. So it's not just the skin's inflammatory diseases, but all that. There are so many studies, and they excitedly actually say they really look very promising. But medicine being what it is, they caution the fact that there are competing studies.
Yes.
There are studies that say it's really very good. But then, on the other hand, there are also studies which say, well, we tried this on the infants. A good example, infants, mothers, breastfeeding mothers were given a certain, let's say lactobacillus capsule or whatever, to try to prevent the development of atopic dermatitis in the babies, because these babies are known to have very strong histories of atopy in the family.
Interesting.
Some studies say that the drinking of it by the baby or in the milk or the mother who is breastfeeding, fantastic. None of the babies develop, or very few, compared to the control, right? But on the other hand, there are studies also which say it's not quite true. But then again, this is what's nice about these articles, is they said, but we have to caution, because there are so many factors in these studies. Like, were the babies full term? Were the mothers healthy? Was there any infections? You know,
what were the other
where did they
extenuating
live?
circumstances?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They should be balanced, and that's kind of difficult to do. But they're getting there.
Right.
And the
So it's
bottom
early
line,
days,
the bottom line to these studies is that these will lead, because now we are in the era of precision medicine, brought about by the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, the 16S RNA, which can be actually immediately, you know, and these doctors are doing the studies all over the world, are actually putting them into a bank that is sharing their studies, so that we're getting lots of data now.
It is exciting times.
It's exciting.
folks. Okay, so getting a little bit into this article, right? I just want to make sure we address this, because there seems to me to be an overcorrection. I think this is the case in general, right? I think we tend to, as people, as humans, do something for a long time, and then when we discover, maybe we shouldn't be doing that much, we abandon it and go hardcore, revere left. Whereas maybe something in the middle is the way to be, right?
That's right.
So this particular article, this statement to me actually rings as true. Microbiologists and brands are learning more and more about the complex relationship we have with our germs. Agreed. These include their starring roles in developing our immune systems, protecting us from pathogens by creating antimicrobial substances and competing with them for space and resources, exactly what you were saying earlier, and lessening the likelihood of autoimmune conditions such as eczema. Okay? So there's a growing awareness that scrubbing them off, these bacteria, along with the natural oils on which they feed, or dousing them with antibacterial products, may not be the best idea after all. I think that's actually a fairly correct, wise, healthy statement, right? But where I get nervous is when I read things like this. Sharing a story of a fellow journalist and soap dodger, he writes, she had tried astringents to dry out the skin, oral and topical antibiotics, the pill, birth control, and isotretinoin, a drug that has been linked to side effects such as suicidal thoughts and inflammatory bowel disease. Yeah, but okay, there's so much not said there. Okay, not only were these ineffective, but she also developed rheumatoid arthritis, an agonizing autoimmune condition. When she started taking immune suppressing medication for that, her hair started falling out. Enough was enough, he writes. this journalist stopped taking any medication for her skin. After an extremely oily few months, we're talking about acne, chronic acne, the acne settled. Now the only thing that touch her face are a microfiber cloth and water. Thanks to her adoption of a more holistic approach to her rheumatoid arthritis, in consultation with a specialist, she has gone into remission too.
Okay.
Stories like that make me nervous, and I'm going to let her explain
Right.
what she thinks.
We dermatologists, we doctors, when we see you, we actually look into a much broader you compared to how we looked at you before. I mean, in our specialty, in dermatology, for instance, we are developing more of a group called the functional dermatologists. In other words, we are dermatologists. We read the literature coming from that are written, the things that I talked to you about earlier, which is evidence-based, has to be proven. You know, we have to look at this and that. We have to follow it to time. Then eventually we do a meta-analysis and say, that looks good, and that becomes kind of real standard of care. But in addition to that, in this day and age, we really look into, you may not realize that, we look into all the other factors because it is a definite known thing that the other factors that can affect you are not necessarily just related to the antibiotic we're going to give you, the isotretinoin we're going to give you for your acne and all of that. Those are actually given by the doctor after a thorough analysis of all of the other factors that contribute to your condition.
Right.
Let me give you an example of a patient who just before I came in showed me a picture of her throbbing finger. Hi. The throbbing finger came from, she is a very functional lady. She's been diagnosed to have a leaky gut as well. So she sees me knowing that I'm very Western trained and I follow the rules and I really go into studies like I've been talking to you about. On the other hand, she also knows I respect functional medicine and that I will talk with her functional doctor and will discuss things. Well, she's been taking probiotics for the longest time. Probiotics. Then one day, this is just 2 weeks ago, I believe, all of a sudden, her two fingers, the index and the ring finger, are swollen. And there are bubbles on the surface of the skin, and they're grouped. That was just about less than a week ago, so I told her, knowing she's on probiotics is anti-taking of antibiotics necessarily. I therefore did that, and I couldn't do the culture or do the laboratories for herpes, for instance. So what I did was I gave her topical treatments to try to balance things there. And recognizing she's on probiotics anyway, something will happen. Guess what? 5 days later, more swollen. This is yesterday. More swollen. She couldn't sleep at night. This was very swollen and painful, you know, hurting her a lot. So when we did the teleconsult yesterday, talking about we listen to our patients and their functional needs. I said, well, we will have to do a culture for bacteria. I want to know now if some organisms have gotten there, some bacteria that's resistant, and therefore we'll have to give you an antibiotic because the probiotic balancing is not working well. And I said at the end, when I see little bubbles, I always think of herpes as well.
Classic.
So I said, the test for that, I'm at home, you're at home, it's late. Why don't I go ahead and give you anyway 4 days of the herpes virus drug? If the test turned out to be negative, well, 4 days of it will not hurt you. If it turns out to be positive, we're ahead by 4 days. All right? So she did. She took an antibiotic that I gave her, a simple antibiotic that is very few organisms are resistant to, and I also gave her the antiviral. Overnight, sends me pictures, and she says, the swelling is gone, I slept well, I didn't even have to take that strong medicine you gave me for pain. So this is what I mean. Go to your doctor and explain the whole gamut of your life that involves the functional part.
All right.
as well as the medical part, because you actually need both.
Right. But getting into this particular thing in the article that I was mentioning, the few things that really bother me about things like this, or that I find are important to caution. Number one, when you say things like, this person, my friend, for example, I have a friend who tried everything, and it was so bad and nothing worked, and then she got rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, wait, right? Because trying everything may or may not be the case, right? We need to know, for example, was the chronic acne, was a patch test ever done, right? Were things ruled out that were hormonal in nature, polycystic ovarian syndrome? Was the acne ever cultured to make sure we knew what bacteria was actually there, or what specific bug had to be dealt with? Because maybe it wasn't bacteria. Maybe it was Klebsiella. Maybe it was Demodex mites just going a little bonkers. So of course the antibacterials wouldn't work. So I find that kind of elision or that kind of omission a little problematic in any of these stories of I tried everything, right? Everything. You would be surprised how few people, even experts in the field, how few people try everything. Because it's not so common to necessarily think to do a scraping on acne. There's actually relatively few doctors I have ever heard of who do a scraping on stubborn acne to rule out MRSA or whatever else, right? It's fairly rare. So I would caution you when you hear these stories, I tried everything. Maybe, maybe not, right? Second thing I would go into here is isotretinoin is linked to suicidal thoughts and inflammatory bowel disease. Every drug has side effects. Every drug, okay? If a drug is available commercially and is prescribed properly, there are things that are taken into account. Do you have a history of suicidal ideation? Do you have other inflammatory conditions or celiacs or other things? This would probably be taken into account before a prescription is done. And many of these side effects are stunningly rare. They're really not all that common. So these are, to me, blanket statements like that can be a little bit dangerous because they imply that if you take isotretinoin, oh my gosh, you're going to want to.
And in regards to the depression thing, you can look up the literature.
Exactly.
And you will see that in more recent years, there now are studies that show that the prevalence of suicidal ideation in, say, teenagers who are taking isotretinoin or adults versus those who don't is about the same. There is the previous ideas that it was much more suicidal,
Right. And this is obviously nothing to take lightly, right? Mental health is extremely important, and people with very chronic, severe inflamed acne already sometimes have to deal with mental health issues because of bullying and whatnot. So it's not something to dismiss. But I find blanket statements like this a little bit worrisome, right? And then implying not only were these ineffective, but she also developed rheumatoid arthritis. Like rheumatoid arthritis, she deals with quite a bit because it is a comorbidity for psoriasis, right? These things can have comorbidities. It's something they looked out for me as well because I have an autoinflammatory condition that involves the immune system. It's not that isotretinoin and all these other things will necessarily cause rheumatoid arthritis, right? And that style of writing makes me a little nervous because it leaves just enough unsaid that it makes you wonder, oh my goodness, am I going to get rheumatoid? No. There's so many other things at play that a rheumatologist will be able to guide you better, right?
Let me just give you a short background on inflammatory diseases. Most of the most common diseases that man has nowadays.
We have a live stream on inflammatory diseases already, and we're talking about the microbiome, and we're responding to an article.
And the microbiome.
So, just make sure. I know it's interesting, but we'll be here 4 hours. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I will not bother you with that.
No, it's not a bother, but I'm just worried we'll,
Teasing you.
Yes. Okay, so this idea of successfully...
So let me finish my statement.
Okay, yes, go.
In inflammatory diseases, which include depression, so cardiovascular disease,
Acne,
hypertension,
psoriasis,
diabetes, acne,
eczema,
psoriasis, rosacea and all that, and eczema. These are called inflammatory diseases. Even acne has been shown to have inflammation of the skin even before that comedone develops, the microcomedone develops. It's, they're inflammatory. And the most important part, therefore, about dealing with this multiple inflammatory diseases is to look for the cause of the inflammation. And many times it could be the diet, the pollutants in the air, lack of sleep,
Okay, here's what
and
I'm struggling.
other factors within as well as without.
All right, viewers, I'm going to ask you to help me because I'm struggling a little bit because to me this is extremely interesting and extremely important, and I actually have her for a bit longer today because she doesn't have an appointment for a little bit. So you tell me if we can stay a little bit over the hour because I want to get to your questions, but I don't want to keep cutting her off because what she's sharing is so fundamental and important. And we have viewers from the Philippines, we have Joy, we have Gabriel in North Carolina, we have Ralikos in Nepal. I mean, it's such a smart international group. I don't want to, curb your flow here. So, okay. So let me know, people, if you're okay to stay a little bit beyond the hour. So quickly, with regards to this woman and her story, I tried everything, and then isotretinoin gave me all these problems and rheumatoid arthritis. I'm sorry, I don't mean to do this. I mean, the link between the two is this. We don't know. And now she only uses microfiber cloth and water for her acne, and everything's fine.
As far as her acne, how about the other diseases?
Right. So again, to me, just the way this is written, so it's not like I think the article is wrong. I also don't think the article is necessarily trying to be bad. I actually think, as I mentioned earlier, it's trying to correct, right? It's trying to bring us back to balance. But I find that the style of writing is a little bit, it occludes too much important information. That might be a matter of space, but I think it could have been mentioned a bit more. So if you do have acne that is chronic, will water and a microfiber cloth be your friend? I doubt it. Again, because there can be so many things at play. As a reminder to everyone, dermatology is one of the specialties that has a cajillion and a half possible diagnoses, and many of them can really get confused with each other, even with specialists. So if you have bumps on your skin, it may not even be acne. It could be keratosis pilaris, right? Which is a dry skin condition.
Folliculitis.
It can be a folliculitis.
Not
It can be
acne.
fungal. It can be demodex mites. It doesn't have to be acne per se. It could be from an organism that requires very targeted medicine. So if you have very chronic acne, particularly if it's inflamed and infected, please see a dermatologist because chances are they're going to want to rule out things like polycystic ovarian syndrome or other inflammatory diseases that might be contributive. They might want to do a culture and figure out what we're really dealing with, okay? So, there.
Doing a culture on acne. I've been doing a lot of culturing of acne nowadays
Yeah.
because of what's happening in our country nowadays and in countries around the world, of people wanting to be so clean and using these things that Laura was talking about, of killing bugs as much as possible.
Yeah.
Kill them on sight.
If you don't mind, can we get to some questions? Because they're really, really good. We have such a skin intellectual group today.
Okay,
All right,
wonderful.
so
yes.
one is from Gabriel. When you have sensitive dry skin, what is the most gentle cleanser for your body?
You know, if you go back to Cleopatra, she used olive oil.
Just oil?
Just oil. If
Yeah.
you really think about it, soap, the cleansing...
Is a later invention.
Soap is a later invention for ease in travel, for ease in putting a bar rather than a liquid that wouldn't spill. So bars of soap are so much easier. But what happens in the making of soap, there is an oil there. Then they add a salt that is usually with a pH that's quite high, pH 9, pH 10.
Which is why we never recommend soap for the face, for
right.
example.
And your pH, the normal pH of skin is about 5.5.
Right.
It is acidic because that's the way the skin likes it. It takes the microbiota of our skin are the ones that produce oil from the oil that the sebum that the sebaceous gland makes, breaks it down into fatty acids. The fatty acids make the acid mantle of the skin.
Which is
So the pH
crucial.
is 5.5.
Right.
So if you're going to be using soap all the time, you're going to have dry skin from it
Right.
because of that salt.
Which
that
can
is there.
partially be addressed by adding, say, virgin coconut oil after you shower. One of her
Yes.
favorite tricks is while you're still wet, put the virgin coconut oil on
And
top
massage it
and
beautifully
massage
into
it
the
in.
skin.
However, that said, so other options, so you actually can clean your skin with just oil. You can keep it in the shower with you, or you can use it just. I remember we had, in celebration of Chinese New Year, we decided not to shower, right, for like a day. And we just used oil to cleanse ourselves, you know. Some people do that, especially when your skin is going through a particularly dry, maybe atopic flare-up, for example. That's kind of a great idea. In general, don't go for hard soaps. Go for liquid or cream cleansers, because the pH will inherently be much, much lower than with a bar soap. Bar soaps really have a higher pH. Other things to look out for: allergens. No fragrance, no preservatives if you can manage that, no dyes, no anything irritating, oh my gosh, cocamidopropyl betaine, cocamidea. These things are known top contact allergens. Tea tree oil, anything that's a top contact allergen, obviously just don't use it if you can, right?
The simpler the better when you're
the
really
simpler the
dry
better.
and rough and scaly. And you're in North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the weather there is becoming prettier, I'm sure, but it's still relatively dry. Use the coconut oil. Use an oil
Yeah.
to massage.
We've
your
also even discussed here for people who are having barrier defect or difficulty in the genital area, virgin coconut oil is a great cleanser. And for anyone out there who's going to be asking again about vaginal washes, they're not necessary. And many of them can disrupt that delicate microbiota. If you speak to a gynecologist, most of them will say, don't futz with it. It's very healthy and natural. A very gentle soap. Virgin coconut oil, that's all you need. Don't mess with her.
Oh yeah, there are lots of people I know who come and say, I'm irritated down there. I ask them what they use for soaping. It's really amazing what they're using, because this they got from this and this they got from that, and it's supposed to make it smell better, or it's supposed to remove the organisms. And what organisms do you want to get rid of? They should be there.
Yeah. Can
They're
I
your
ask you then-
microbiota.
Let's make sure we answer this, because actually Gabrielle sort of brought this up earlier, and I thought it was important because she's right. Chemo definitely has side effects, and you know, when you're talking about people who are undergoing chemotherapy, there's always a concern about being immunocompromised. So the idea of not showering can actually take on a more serious issue. So I guess the general blanket question I want to ask you is showering, why is showering not something to do away with completely? What is the benefit of showering?
Benefit of showering in this day and age, that there are particulates from the chemicals that are out there in the air that get to our skin. There are particulates, and they are small, less than 25 micron, I guess, and then the larger one. The larger ones stay on the surface of the skin, and they do their thing of producing aging effect on the skin. Then the smaller ones are the ones that you can inhale and bring in. But the larger ones, you can wash that off therefore. And what are the larger particulates and gaseous things that are in the air that even includes low surface ozone? Those are the airplane exhaust that they just passed by, the cars, the traffic, and if you live in an urban community, you will have, like in the Philippines, we have so much traffic here. But there's also a lot of industries that are relatively near enough that they can get to our skin. And so those are the ones that need to be removed as well. So those are surface particulates, surface dirt. In addition, of course, to the usual dirt, from running around and walking around and touching things. So
Yeah.
those can be used.
And some
but not this heavy duty,
Again,
scrubbing
it's
of-
somewhere in the middle, right? Because I've also read other articles that are like, oh, but look at our tribal brothers and sisters and siblings. They don't shower and they don't smell, right? Someone else has a question about body odor here. We'll get to. And something I always like to say is it completely not showering at all? Because in the Philippines we do have tribes who do bathe in the water, in the lakes, for example, or maybe use sort of what's
They
available
splash.
there.
Yeah.
That's not the same as going completely without, right? also take into account the different environment that they're in. Many of our brethren, indigenous brethren who live in their areas are often not as big as it should be and not respected as it should be, but in protected areas where the pollution is less. Certainly disinfectants and chemicals and all this other stuff is far less to non-existent. It's not the same environment that many of us live in now, right? So it's a false equivalency is what I always say, okay? Sorry, so another great question that we have here is from Anna. In my teenage years, here we go, I struggled with body odor. Despite taking a lot of baths, trying a plethora, one of my favorite words, of deodorants and antiperspirants, maybe it would have helped if I didn't shower as much. I love this question.
Yes.
Because it's surprising the answer.
Yes.
So, okay. The thing about body odor, particularly in the armpits, is they're caused by adrenal, eccrine, what?
The apocrine.
Apocrine, there you go. Hormones excreted, right? And they actually don't smell like anything.
No.
Right.
It's when the apocrine gland produces sweat, and it does have its own smell, which is different from the eccrine glands. It's a little bit more musty maybe and all that, but it is denatured by the organisms that are there.
It's the bacteria.
The bacteria break them down.
If you have more, let's say, or they become more hyperactive, that's where the smell can come from, right?
Yeah.
It's them breaking down those excretions into, is it fatty acids?
Into fatty acids.
And ammonia.
Right.
That's where it smells funky.
Right. The proteins are the ones that smell.
So it's, bathing so much, maybe if you were using a lot of germicides, that might have killed some of the healthy bacteria that kept some of the, say, smellier bacteria in check. That might have been an issue. But what's really interesting that I found that she told me years later is many times it's actually the fragrance in deodorants that can cause the smell to happen, because it's the interaction between the fragrance and the bacteria that now cause body odor.
Not only that, a number of people, this is not bacteria, but lots of people will complain about having discoloration of their armpit. And that can be due to these chemicals that are in those antiperspirants.
So for body odor, especially extreme, let's say bromhidrosis, what would you actually recommend to control that odor?
To use the antiperspirant at night and in the morning.
Because again, the sweat, right?
And
the bacteria breaking down the sweat is what causes the smell. So getting that sweat under control is fundamental. Because then there's nothing for the bacteria.
There are new
to break down.
antiperspirants that are not just based on aluminum chloride, the usual, but are based upon I'm really sorry, I can't remember the name, but it's based upon a nerve interaction of actually preventing that, closing up the apocrine gland pores so that it doesn't...
Sounds like a drug.
Yeah, it doesn't... Yes,
it's probably prescribed. But other things, for example, I know that people have done.
But lots of people develop reactions to it, by the way, so it's not very popular.
So what I did personally, because I had hyperhidrosis on the underarms and a little bit on my palms and my feet, is I actually got Botox injections on the underarms.
Works very well.
Works extremely well for months at a time. Thankfully, I didn't have bromhidrosis or bad body odor associated with it, but I dripped. It was awful. I destroyed so many shirts. I dripped in the winter. So for me, using the Botox injections helped, but also just using a very drying antiperspirant can really help. You might want to explore this nerve blocking sort of antiperspirant, but again, just watch out for side effects. But there are many, many options now. And no, it's not don't shower and let the bacteria run wild. No. Maybe don't go crazy with germicidals there. But again, it's a matter of controlling the sweat so the bacteria doesn't go nuts. Okay. Are there more bugs? Sorry. The questions are coming in and they're awesome and I'm just getting lost a bit. Are there people with more bugs in their body than others?
That can happen. I mean, we're all individuals and we are the children of our parents.
That's true.
So that if your mother had an operation or took antibiotics when she was pregnant with this little girl,
you're going to have less. Actually, this is true.
affect her.
The studies are showing if you were born by a cesarean section, you lose about 40% of the natural microbiota
Yeah.
that people who go through natural childbirth have.
That's right.
Important. The claims that vaginal, I think it's wiping at birth to give newborns. So the argument was babies who are born with cesarean section have less of that microbiota. Therefore, to try to get some of the mother's vaginal microbiota onto the baby, those have been debunked. Because apparently the microbiota of the babies that come from natural childbirth are from the gut, not the vaginal area. So don't get into that as well. There's
that
good
right?
stuff. Yeah, it was interesting. It came and went. But in case anyone still thinks that, that's not the case. But that article I mentioned in the New Yorker, one of the things they were saying that might happen in the future is when we're born, they actually might test the newborn's microbiota profile and be able to see, oh, if you're lacking this, maybe those, like vaccines, those are the supplements that will be given to children up until a certain age. It's really compelling. what
There
might
are
be done in
actually
the future.
studies ongoing now, being done at the US NIH. Dr. Heidi Kong is the number one person over there doing studies, and all over the world there are other studies as well on these microbiota in babies, anticipating what may happen to them, classifying or looking at their microbiota, and then doing something to correct it if it's needed, and then anticipating it and looking into the future whether they actually develop the disease or not.
Okay.
So there are studies on this ongoing.
I'm
now.
going to run one quick question. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to get to another question here. But there are skincare brands now touting themselves as with probiotics.
Mhm.
I'm curious, what do you think about that?
I don't prescribe them
Okay.
because I don't know.
Mm.
You know, like we
Very
just
early in
said
the skin.
a few
Yeah.
sentences ago, people vary,
Mhm.
you know, in their kind of microbiota in the skin. And I can see one of the things that I remember seeing, the conclusion that these people say in this more recent 2020, 2019 studies is that these will be leading us to targeted treatments.
Right.
That will be based upon the actual microbiota
Right.
configuration or profile of a person.
Yeah, that's interesting, no? Because I find, especially hearing you talk today, the skin's microbiota is already very diverse.
Mhm.
And as we were talking about with body odors, we were talking about with acne and whatever, many of us already have more or less of certain microbes sort of competing for dominance or space or balance on our skins. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, if I put a probiotic cream on, I don't actually know what I'm going to be doing because I don't know what's more dominant in my skin, what needs more addressing, what needs to be addressed, what needs controlling versus promoting, right? So personally, I think it might be too early still to be applying probiotics on the skin because you don't know what they're going to make proliferate.
And
right?
remember what I just gave you as an example last night, yesterday afternoon, of my patient. A real fundamental kind of a person who's been drinking lots of good vitamins, nutrients, and lots of very good probiotics. So
It's 11.
I didn't think about giving her an antibiotic at all, thinking, okay, we will be protecting this with the probiotics that she's taking. Let's allow that, and we'll just do topical, antifungal, antibacterial, whatever. And here you are, 4 or 5 days later, swollen,
Yeah.
painful. I don't take
So, yeah.
anything for granted when it comes to the fingers. And this is when I said to her, I'm really sorry. I'm going to give you two kinds of antimicrobials.
Mm-hmm.
One for what I think might be a gram-positive organism from the way it looks, and another for a virus that
Okay.
it might be because of all of those bubbles that
I'm
we
going to
see.
jump in because it's 11 and we still have questions and some of them are important. Jana's asking, how often should bathing or showering take place each week in order to maintain a good balance?
Each week, I do it every day.
Okay.
Why every week?
Well, it depends. I know some people who don't do it. I know some people who don't bathe, shampoo their hair every day, right?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. But I you know, based on what she was saying earlier about particulates, pollutants, allergens, photoallergens, pollution, all these other things that we happen to live in, it's probably a good idea to do it every day. I do it twice a day because I work out in the morning. and I do it at night just because I don't like sleeping in what I perceive to be the filth of the day.
I
But
answered
that's me.
very quickly.
Yeah.
It really depends upon the kind of skin that you have.
Yeah.
People who are like me, who are really much older, and hardly ever go out, if at all, you know, and are not exposed to anything much.
That's
so no
right. Especially in
particular whatever.
quarantine.
And therefore, our skin tends to be more dry than the usual.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be necessary to actually use to bathe every day. You're right. Using a washcloth for the private areas just with water or coconut oil or whatever may be sufficient.
Yeah.
And then applying my favorites for humectant and occlusive action on the skin that have no side effects would be just applying coconut oil and then a grease like Boo Boo Balm for the lips and and petroleum jelly, pure Vaseline, and on top of it to give it more occlusive effect.
Right. So, if you notice, for example, people who are bedridden in hospitals, I don't know if that's a proper term, who cannot leave the bed for extended periods, right? And can't make it to a shower and cannot even do, say, a sponge bath. For some of them, she really recommends just go massage them very, very well with coconut oil, which also helps prevent bed sores, right? Okay.
I recently had one 92-year-old like that
Okay.
who
So-
loves me.
Joy is asking, what are the good and bad bugs? Great question, Joy. Thank you. There's a lot. So,
What good bugs are the ones that are there when you're in a normal state, and they can.
But again, because of the funkiness that we live in now in the pandemic and all the disinfectants and the chronic stress and immunocompromised situations from that, even some of the natural bugs can get a little offensive, right? So Malassezia is fungus that we're born with and fine on the skin. Demodex mites truly are supposed to be there. And what is it? Staphylococcus epidermidis. But even then, she's seeing skin problems caused by
I've
these
had
guys.
cases of
Yeah.
Staphylococcus epidermidis that are resistant to certain antibiotics. It's really crazy what's going on. Joy, was that Joy who was asking questions? I have a table I can send you here of the names of the microbiota.
I don't know how we're gonna. You know what? I'll make an in-skin post within the week. Can I commit to that?
Of the names of
By
the
weekend.
organisms that are in the skin and that are in the gut and how they interact. This would be nice for those who ask that particular.
I will make
in
an
different
in-skin blog
diseases.
post.
Atopic, scleroderma, psoriasis.
This is
bullous,
awesome.
pemphigoid.
But I'm not going to hold it up here and say, take a screenshot, because actually you could if you wanted to. But I will commit to making an in-skin blog post with this, proper citations and everything so you can see. Joy, I promise. Okay, making sure we get to some of these, and then we'll have to go because it is past 11. And Gavin wants to come join. Do our skin bugs affect our... Oh, Nina, I wanted to say, I gave birth cesarean section as well to my children. And so I'm actually hyper aware of making sure that they eat
Probiotics.
pickled onions, probiotics, bagoong, which is fermented fish paste in the Philippines, anything fermented, vinegar, yogurt, kefir, kombucha. It's very top of mind for me to make sure that they eat that stuff, precisely because they're C-section babies. Okay, also Nina's asking, do skin bugs affect our skin types? Our skin types. Do more good bugs make your skin more dry or oily or unrelated?
It may.
Early
Definitely,
days, we don't yet know the role.
Yeah.
Okay, Gabriel has another question about how does dry skin and the microbiome relate? I don't think we know yet, except for we know that atopic dermatitis has more of a colonization of staph, right?
Yeah, in atopic dermatitis, you have talk about multiple factors in the host of his skin as well as inside. So in atopic dermatitis, there are things like
Kimchi.
In a number of people, not everybody, an inherited genetic defect in the making of the filaggrin, which is a part of the skin barrier. Defective,
Filaggrin.
and so there's, you like that name,
It's okay.
Fillagrin.
Filaggrin.
So that can be
I'm
inherited.
feeling so
right?
filaggrin.
And so because of that lack of it, there's already a dysbiosis, the barrier is a little bit dysfunctional. Add to that the fact that in atopic dermatitis, people put on a lot of steroids, so that skin barrier also becomes compromised further. Add to that all the other chemicals that are applied on that skin that may have secondary contact dermatitis, things also contributing to skin barrier.
Okay.
And with that, therefore, then the skin becomes dry. So there
it
are
is related.
multiple, they are related.
Okay.
Yeah.
From
From the
this is the
genetic
last
to
question,
the
I think,
external
and it's an
effects.
excellent question. It's from Ruth. There was this no poo movement, no shampoo. Yeah. To encourage people to stop using shampoo and just leave the scalp microbiome to just take over the cleaning. Are the bugs different in the scalp area as there's more hair? Or a lot of folks who tried this no poo thing just went through days of itchiness? So no shampoo. Okay. Again, me personally, if I'm going to take a stab here, to me, again, it's a matter of balance. As I've gotten older, when you get older, folks, you produce less sebum, oil, same banana, in general.
Sweat.
Right. So as I've gotten older, I've found I don't like to shampoo my hair every day anymore, right? I will sometimes because I work out every day. So when I'm particularly sweaty, I don't enjoy going through the day with really wet, sweaty hair. I don't like the feeling. But especially in the cold, I think it was Joy who mentioned, someone who mentioned not going out a lot. Yeah, I might shampoo my hair once a week, if that. Maybe twice a week, right? Once or twice a week. Because I find it does get drier. Plus I got seborrheic dermatitis as I got older. But with regards to stopping shampoo altogether, so the two questions here are, how do you feel about the idea of stopping shampoo altogether? And are the bugs on the scalp different from the body?
Okay, stopping the shampoo. And then what do you do to clean the hair?
Right.
If you don't use
So
the
we go
shampoo?
back to that
You
thing
then,
about-
You then use the soap that you
I
use
don't
in the
use
body.
soap. Yeah. Don't use soap. So are the bugs in the scalp different from the body, you think?
Probably.
It's really
Yes.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, I didn't bring
It's
it.
going to be in that table when I put it up in the blog.
I have a picture actually of the entire body
too
and what are
funny.
the bugs in the head, the neck, the blah 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 blah.
Okay, I will get to that, I promise. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to add here is a question, and then I will let you go.
Okay.
Is the pH on the face different from the pH of the skin on the body?
There are different pHs in different parts of the body, the armpits and the genitals, you know.
There you go.
So I can give you also that picture.
Okay, that'll be a second blog post that I'll have to get to. Okay, folks, you know, I've kept you here
What
over
an
time.
interesting group of people.
I know, this is
Love you
great
guys.
questions. Thank you so much for being here. Stick around, please. We have some reminders and also the prize. So, mwah. I love you. Thank you.
Love you, love you, love you.
Thank you for bringing all that new stuff that I now have to translate into blog posts.
Actually, this is good because I'm being asked to give a lecture
Fantastic.
sometime soon in about coconut oil again, but this one is a bit more advanced on making the standards of coconut oil, and I'm going to well anyway, don't let me
Any
get
doctors
started.
who are interested in that, let me know, because it might be open to other physicians that can invite
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Okay, so very quickly, folks, and then we'll be able to award our prize for today. Just quick reminders to check vmvhypoallergenics.com internationally and vmvhypoallergenics.ph in the Philippines. Check out our research center and clinic on Facebook. It's the VMV Skin Research Center and Clinic for teleconsultations and for that special Stay Safe bundle that I mentioned earlier. And for everybody around the world, if you've had a patch test, you can PM us your results and we can customize recommendations for you based specifically on your allergens and possible cross-reactants. And don't forget to join us at next week's live stream.
Again, same time.
Yeah, we're
Wednesday.
not quite sure what the topic will be. I think we're sort of debating between which might be more interesting. So definitely write in the
Viruses.
comments, and the skin, no, maybe.
Yeah.
Write in the comments what you would like to know more about.
So that we
Please
can-
subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and
Oh,
on
and one
Instagram.
One more
Yes.
thing, also click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos.
Okay. And we are going to be announcing our winners for the travel-sized, I'm sorry, I actually have a travel-sized, I didn't bring it, but the travel-sized Idmonolorangel today. Our winners are, congratulations to Gabriel Prestwick in North Carolina, Joy Correa in the Philippines, and Jana in the USA. So thank you for watching again, everybody. Happy International Women's Day, Women's Month. all of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, make sure you let us know what else you'd like us to talk about, and we'll see you next week.
And hugs.
And hugs to everybody, but social distancing if you're outside is what we're
Virtual
saying.
hugs.
Virtual hugs to everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I've been told to do this more slowly because it can be abrupt. Ding.
And it's not ending.